Hello everyone, how y'all doing? Welcome to another Surviving Quickmatch Warzone video series. Today we are playing on Biomes of Americas, one of my most dreaded templates. I've faced off against Xenophon, which is quite well placed on Quickmatch, so regardless of who wins between us, we will both get a nice amount of yellow or lose quite a decent amount of yellow, so it was a pretty close match. The layout was very open, more open than usually was. You can see an obvious 1-2 pick in East Coast, but then again, it's also countered by Toronto, so it was a bit iffy if you should go for it or not. I decided to go for it, and then put my 3 and 4 in Sao Paulo and Uruguay to control the south completely. The 5 is on Chiclayo, which is mostly for position. You want to control that area because you can get both Lima and Llanos. But I knew it was likely he would either be in Galapagos or San Ambrosio and Juan Fernandez. So it was more just to make sure that I had the good position there. And possibly at the first turn you have +1 if you get position on Lima. Um, After that, I went for 6 and 7 on the +4 in Chilean woodlands. Sometimes this is not the best option. You could easily also have put your 6 and 7 on southern Great Plains and be well justified that it would be faster income on turn 1. But then I wanted the full +4 because I knew I would be facing him in at least 2 positions, probably in East Coast and probably in the middle. So I knew I needed big income without that much deployment to get it. So I didn't want to scatter around. I wanted to have everything together. And if I put it on Southern Great Plains, it would be likelier that I would split it with him. And also there was a position on Houston available that could also be further split. So we would probably have 3 hot zones instead of 2. So I decided to leave Southern Great Plains for later and focus on the safer Chilean woodlands. It could also be countered by Juan Fernandez, but I was hoping it wouldn't be. After that, I decided to go for Southern Great Plains. Then the position on the north in Alaska coastline, which would take quite a long while to get, but it would be very safe. So you should definitely put it in some sort of priority. Then the counters, San Ambrosio and Juan Fernandez first, because I wanted control of this +4. Then the Galapagos, because I knew either I would lose Chiclayo or I would need to have a counter to it, or I need to have a combo with it. The 13 is up north in Toronto to counter East Coast. Might not really be needed in this case. I would always split it in the worst case scenario. So I would always have 1 pick there. So I probably should have placed my 13th pick in Clipperton Island instead. Clipperton Island does nice to both expand into Revilla, Guidego, and Clipperton, which is really hard to read because whatever I place, I can't see the full name of the thing. Fizzer, if you're watching this video, please fix this. It's really hard to read. And then from there I could expand into California, which would be safe and a good income and slow and steady income. So yeah, hard map to pick. Let's take a look at Xenophon's picks, and he went for 1-2 on the obvious East Coast and 3-4 in the Southern Great Plains. He really prioritized that. Left the 5th pick on Chiclayo, same as me, and the 6-7 on the south. So he was ignoring the south a lot. That was probably one of his worst decisions in my humble opinion. But it's really hard to prioritize these first picks because there are so many hotspots. It's hard to tell which one should be higher in priority. Pick number 8 in Houston, so we really wanted to control the central part, which makes sense. It has good expansion into North and South Plains and also the complete Gulf of Mexico. The 9th pick on Alaska, and good for slow expansion. 10th pick and 11th on counters. I don't know why he prioritized the 10th on Clipperton Island. I would have prioritized Santa Cruz, but I don't know. Maybe it was just coming from there and just clicked along the coast. 10, 11, 12, and then the 13th up north in Trinidad and 14th in Puerto Wyson. I like my picks better, but I can understand why he would prioritize the north a little bit. We ended up splitting him more focused on the north and me more focused on the south. I was okay with that, but then I realized he was in Santa Cruz for sure. I had that intel. So this was the problem. I knew that if I allowed him to stay in Santa Cruz, he would be able to have a foot to the south, and I could easily be wiped out from the north because I would be disputing East Coast or trying to break Gulf of Mexico and failing. So it was really hard to know what really I should do at this point. I decided to expand, I believe. Let's see. What do I do? Yeah, I expanded hard. I managed to out expand him in this turn. I also attacked with 5 Lima to make sure I had position there. I wanted to get that extra +1 and threaten that. And since I noticed that he actually went for Isabella instead of breaking Lima, I decided to go full into Santa Cruz and try to break it. So that's what I did. Unfortunately, he had first order, so he moved his older leftovers, and he deployed well into Santa Cruz while I deployed in the south to keep expanding. He didn't. He split in both of his. He didn't keep expanding on. Like he could have gone for Gulf of Mexico this turn and finish it off, or keep expanding on Alaska coastline. But instead, he decided to deploy everything on the front line, and it was well executed from his behalf. I ended up not being able to break him. He got lucky on the first turn as well. 9 versus 7 wouldn't break him anyways, but it would have been less of a slam. It would have done more damage to him. And now I was very weak on the north. See here, I think he attacks me in the end. A lot of small attacks. Yeah, he attacks me in the end, and now I was left very precarious on Carolina. So I had the hard decision to do, and I still needed to have a card piece. So the decision was, what can I do on this turn? I could either try to slam Santa Cruz. I was unsure of his income at this point. I wasn't sure if he had the +4 finished or not. Because I didn't count properly. If I had counted properly, I would have known that Gulf of Mexico was unfinished. And so the decision was, would I slam Santa Cruz with deploying everything I had? Or should I deploy minimally in Carolina and keep expanding to get my card piece? And maybe I decided to gather the troops in San Ambrosio in the end. I was expecting him to try to break San Ambrosio or try to actually break Lima, or not attack anything, just deploy a big bunch. And in that case, I would rather have San Ambrosio protected because it was my main income, was in Chilean woodlands. So it was a hard decision. I ended up, I think I have to do this. Yeah, I ended up expanding into the south to get +1, which is doubtful. I could have used these 3 income more in the border and just expand minimally in Minas Gerais, but well, that's what I ended up doing. He failed to tap me with 1. I had moved 3 before already, and I managed to stay alive in Carolina, which was pretty good. Meanwhile, he finished Gulf of Mexico, so he has slightly less income than me, but I was still expecting him to have more. So another hard turn, and this time I decided to just slam Santa Cruz and try to get it and just forsake Carolina. See, and he fully deployed there, so he fell for my trap, tapped me with 1. I was assuming that he would try to hit me in Lima, instead of going for San Ambrosio, because it would make more sense for him to try to break some income of mine instead of running into a possible wall. That's what I would have done. I would have attacked Lima with maybe 4 or something like that and blockade Isabella behind me. But well, that's his decision. And I got lucky. Managed to break him. And now I knew I had to expand. I wasn't quite sure what income he had. I was pretty sure that he would have same or more income than I did. So if I fully expand and still hit him, it would be doubtful if I would be running into a wall or not. So I was very weary on these attacks. I decided to expand and not attack at all. Was expecting him to maybe go for Costa Rica, which would be a possibility, but would be a bit silly at the same time. He was already deploying in Clipperton Island, didn't even try to blockade Isabella, just assumed that I would attack. But I didn't attack this turn. I decided to keep expanding. He was also expanding up in the north. You can see the income 11 to 8. Next turn, I do attack with larger stack. I see that he's putting up some defenses on Clipperton Island, but he hasn't been deploying that much. And he hasn't finished the +2 in Woodlands Coast either. He's just expanding into the more beneficial areas in Alaska coastline and in northern Great Plains. So at this point, I still thought that he could possibly have more income than I had. So I was still a bit reluctant to attack full on. I did slam him this turn because I knew that I didn't deploy that much. I only deployed in Medellin. I slammed him. It went okay, but I thought he still was expanding and getting more income. Possibly might force me to run into a wall. And now this next turn, I had some weird expansions to make. If I wanted to get any proper places, I would either have to go for northern Andes, which would involve 3, 5, 6, 7, 8 deployment and get 0 income back. So I was very weary if he would fully deploy and I would run into a wall. So my decision in the end was not to attack at all, just deploy minimally and keep expanding. I also started expanding to Martinique because I thought he noticed that I was blocking his way and he would probably go through Bermuda to try to counter me on the south side, which he didn't. And this next turn, I decided to just blockade everything here in the islands. I knew he had a block. He most probably would not attack me. So I could just fully deploy everywhere else, finish Cusco, get these islands in Fernando de Noronha and Trindade, which would help me get Caatinga a bit more optimum, and also start expanding with the big stack into Guadalupe. So at this point, I completely blocked him off from accessing the south. Or he could still make it, but he would have to deploy 2 full turns, and at that point I would have already been in Bermuda contesting him. So he didn't expect me to show up in Bermuda this turn, so we only attacked with 13, not the full amount. And to even make things worse for him, he went into Guadalajara to expand into Mexican cedar forest without actually deploying on the other places, so he was in -2 when I caught his border there. So this game was pretty much won at this point, but he didn't realize because he didn't really know my full income. Managed to break him some more, kept expanding, finished the +2 in Caatinga. This would allow me to get southern Amazon really easy. He was also still expanding elsewhere and still thinking that he could out-income me, thinking I wasn't expanding while I clearly was. So I decided to go through United States of Jeff to try to counter his middle without getting stalled. And I kept pushing him back, and there was no way for him to win the game. So I think the deciding turns were those two around these islands in Galapagos. The decision to let go of Carolina and just focus on Galapagos, I think, was the best one that I could have made at that point. And it really allowed me to secure my income, make sure that it's safe, and that's the main point that you want to have on well, pretty much any template, but Biomes of Americas in specific. If you have safe income with no way for them to reach there easily, you pretty much win the game. It's impossible for them to well, you can out-expand them. Even if you are behind on income, you can hold on one of the strongholds and out-expand them and then break through, even if you don't break through immediately like I managed to do in Bermuda. So yeah, consider those choke points if you have a north versus south kind of situation. Consider the choke points on the islands. Those are really important to keep an eye on. And yeah, that was the lesson for today. Well played, Xenophon. Thank you for the ELO and the coins. It was also a coin game, so got 4.85 ELO out of this. and 18 coins. So see you next video. Hope you guys are enjoying the series. Let me know in the comments below what you would have done differently, if you would have picked somehow different, that kind of jazz. See you next time. Bye bye everyone. Take care.